Welcome to the Infinite Ways podcast with Luke the Singer Guy featuring Olivia Simone. Welcome to episode 2 of the Infinite Ways podcast. This one will be called Drawing in Black and White. Hold up a second. Wanted to give a little prologue for this one. It was an interesting experience as I am still a new interviewer, and I feel like there were moments that I should have dug in a little bit differently or followed a different route. I guess I can work on my listening in terms of finding those special moments to explore that take interview from being a good interview to a great interview. And this one especially was interesting because Olivia does not do interviews that often. So it was a inexperienced interviewee and an inexperienced interviewer, but this is part of the journey. It's what we work on. We're also in the process of figuring out what this podcast is still, and I think one of the things we realized with this episode is that it's less about me trying to wrap in our concept of the infinite ways or what infinite ways-ness is, which obviously is important. But the way that we do that is just getting out of the way and letting each guest tell their story. So, without further ado, official episode 2, Drawing in Black and White.
All right. Welcome to the Infinite Ways podcast, episode 2. Episode 1 was a part 1 and part 2, so this is officially episode 2. We talked it over and we couldn't think of anybody better to bring on our show for our first official non-in-house guest than our friend Olivia Simone.
I'm honored.
She's a wonderful friend of the band. We're happy to have her. She's a visual artist. And we just thought it would be great to get her perspective on our concept of infinite ways and transcending ideas and pushing boundaries and stuff like that. So we know a lot about you. Can you catch us up a little bit to speed and let them know just a little bit about you in general?
So I'm a digital artist based here in LA. I do portraits. I love skin and making everyone come to life and see themselves how I see them.
So we like, one of the things that's really cool about her art is you do tend to do a lot of black portraits.
Yes.
You do a lot of black skin.
Mm-hmm.
And you seem to have on some of the ones that we've liked, which led us to you, is the like almost a wet look.
Yeah.
Is that something? Well, first of all, like, what drew you to that, and second of all, tell us about that process.
So I like the look because it pushes detail. So I'm trying to get super into every single nook and cranny of your skin tone, kind of. So I think the wetness, it's definitely a challenge as an artist, and it you have to play around with skin complexion, skin tone, and I think it just pops. It's very cool.
Obviously, you are a black woman.
Yes.
Why is it important to you, both as an artist and as a black woman, to have representation, both creating and in the grand scheme of things? Why is that? Why is it important to have representation?
Many reasons. The first one that comes to mind, I think, is the younger generations, children, and just seeing us in a certain light, because most African Americans are portrayed in one way or the other, and I feel like it's my responsibility to show little girls and little black boys how you look. You're beautiful, and I think that America and other places deserve to see us like that.
So at the same point in time, so obviously we always talk about the infinite ways as like pushing boundaries in terms of like acceptance amongst it's being genreless, it's being formless. Where do you both push your own boundaries in your artwork, but also, again, like you were saying with representation, push the boundaries of what people accept as art? Because I mean, like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I would say that still in this day and age, it especially in a digital medium, I mean, there are Black artists out there, but it doesn't seem like anybody who's hitting the mainstream. There's not a ton of representation amongst the artists themselves, right?
Yeah, there's not.
So how does that change or inform the way that you create art, or what you're trying to do with it once you...
Yes, it does, but my goal isn't really to be mainstream. So I feel like my art is gonna hit those people who it hits in a way. As far as pushing boundaries, I kind of want to step out. I want to get more into stepping out my comfort zone. I think that'll be my next steps. The last piece before my last piece, I did skin, and that's getting into like more nudity. So I kind of want to go that route. I don't know how that's gonna work with everyone, but...
And you were telling me before that you've also dabbled in creating characters and creating storylines and stuff like that. And is that something that you'd be interested in doing further, in creating your own characters and building your own worlds?
Definitely. I wanted to create a whole series. Yeah. So I'm still toggling with a couple ideas for it, but yes, creating characters, creating series, shows, movies, all of the above.
So I feel like I should have waited for some of these interview questions on camera, but we were talking beforehand. But is that, you were saying that you were starting to move into digital. A, you were saying that's not what you expected it was going to be. But B, was that why you started moving into digitals? Because you thought you would have more penetration in terms of what you're getting at?
Yes and no. I think that digital is easy. It's really smooth. It's a fast process, and it's fun. It allows you to quickly create a piece, and like, it's there on the internet, and boom, it's ready for you. But regular of drawing and pencil to paper and charcoal and just the original is much better. It's time consuming, but it's much better, and it's natural, and you can feel it. And yeah, digital art is just where today's art is going, as far as computer animation and 3D and gaming. I feel like that's just the new age, but I have to still give some respect to where it all started, and I might return back. So
that brings me to two questions. We actually were watching we watched the Lil Dicky Earth music video earlier.
Yes.
Both that was hilarious, like, great cause, incredible music video, but you were most impressed with the artwork.
Yes.
Explain it to me as someone who's not I dabble, but I'm not a real artist.
It was great. Like, it was I'm just gonna say he did his job. Yeah. Whoever he had do the animation for him was amazing. It was colorful, it was vibrant, it was super detailed. Everything, it was perfect, kind of. It was like the perfect video, the perfect animation.
Yeah. So in like traditional, and I don't know, maybe you don't know this, but I know in traditional film, they do sequences in terms of like changeovers, and you have little, this reel and then that reel. Is digital artwork in the same concept where you're storyboarding this section and that section, and you have to actually work on the transitions, or is it just worked into these sections?
As far as animation, there is sequences and storyboarding involved. For digital art alone, since it's not motion based, no, you can just like I mean, I sketch. That's
Yeah.
like similar to storyboarding. I sketch whatever I'm drawing out and then do it. But as far as animation goes, yeah, you're storyboarding. You're putting everything into segments. Yeah.
So one of the things that, in terms of the infinite ways, like we've been talking about what it means to be an artist in the digital age, both musically, but also in the way that we can interact with people. Like, and we're certainly not the first, but we're trying to find new ways. How do you feel about like the movement towards like NFTs and like, I mean, because I've seen some of those NFTs, and that's not real art, right?
Yeah.
Like that's like a knockoff Mario Brothers 8-bit thing that sold for $16 million, but like
some of it look. I agree. Some of it is a little, I don't know if I can guess what's going on, but some are really, really fucking. Oh, sorry.
No, it's all right. We'll put explicit, not for children. NFTs are sometimes fucking good.
They are really good. I follow an artist. I can't remember her name. I wish I could, but her work is it's amazing. It's so detailed, and she does like random like fantasy scenes, and they're beautiful. And she, from what I'm understanding, she does that, and they pay her tons of millions of money to create them, and they're really nice. But as far as like art itself, getting into that, that's kind of what to me takes that passion and I don't know, I can't even give you a word for it, but it takes that feeling away from it kind of, because it's getting too computer, too digital sometimes.
Yeah.
So
I had a follow-up question and I forgot it. This is gonna be the awkward part that I'm gonna end up editing because I don't know where we're going right now. Yeah. So edit video and audio here because this is one of the funny spots where I don't know what's going on. Okay, I got it. So you obviously, we previously knew a little bit about each other. We've come across each other, and again, like we do consider you a very good friend of the band, and we like having you around. How does, preface with the band being obviously the band's attempt in the concept of infinite ways is again to be somewhat genreless in the way that we create music. How does music affect what you create, and what are some staples that are close to your heart with music, but also what are some things that are maybe left field that people wouldn't anticipate that you would listen to? Dig into it. Tell us about your music taste.
Ooh, so I think around the time I first met you in the band, I said that I listened to about everything. But apparently I don't listen to everything. I don't listen to everything. But I listen to a lot, I think. And I think mostly a lot of R&B and a lot of hip hop and a lot of pop and all those songs, and whether it be from 80s, 90s, 2000s now, they touch me, and I get into them when I'm doing my artwork, and they kind of keep me going, and I have to put myself in a mindset. So like whatever I'm listening to has to correspond with what I'm making. So as far as artists, there's so many. I think one of the main ones, if I get into 90s, Aaliyah, and definitely Beyonce as well. Beyonce, Destiny's Child, Monica and Brandy.
So let me steer a little bit. So it actually seems like it's a few years ago now. I remember it being so relevant, but now it's actually a few years ago. But how did something like the Lemonade album and both because that was super tied up individuals.
Yes.
There's a lot of artists now that aren't exclusively working as musical artists. It's a whole concept wrapped up with I mean, music videos have always been a thing, but like that was different.
Yes.
You know, and it also felt like it was kind of a not a social movement, but like
it was big.
It was big.
It was really big. And the videos alone told a story, and it was super creative, and each of her videos gave back to artists from God knows when, and it showed a lot to the Black community, I feel like, because, and it's deeper than most people think. Lemonade is mostly, it's empowerment, but it is about like a relationship gone wrong, and then that comes together again. But I think you have to listen to it with the videos. The videos tell a story. Yeah.
And I know that, and I can't remember, it might have been Lemonade, but I can't remember the song, but Serena Williams?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of the Williams sisters.
Yeah, she was in it. Yeah.
And that kind of had its own controversy because, again, that was her stepping out of a genre or box that people anticipated that she was supposed to be in.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
Like, what was that experience like when
I saw?
Yeah.
It was like, I felt proud because there was multiple people in that scene actually. So it was Serena Williams, it was the young actress Zendaya, and I think it was really inclusive. So I like that she grabbed these different, basically Black women, and brought them together so they could feel this song. And that, if I'm not mistaken, that video was shot in New Orleans, and she has a lot of family there, so I think she just wanted everybody to feel at home. Yeah.
Yeah. I could probably identify an early stage of when I knew, I mean, we kind of talked about it in the last episode, like I was kind of born into being a musician in some senses, but like there was still a point in time when I was a kid that I was like, oh, this is what I'm doing.
Yes.
Do you remember as an artist what that moment was for you?
Yes. It was, I think summer of, I don't know which year, but I think I was just like, I was so inspired by what was around me, and it was simple then, and I knew that I loved it because it was so simple to just come to me naturally. And I would just literally go in the backyard and draw whatever I could see down to the smallest of detail, and I just enjoyed capturing what was around me and putting it onto paper, like if I'm taking a photo. And I would just draw, and then I got into making characters, and so I made a book full of probably 20 or so characters, and I enjoyed giving them identities and making them come to life. And I kind of knew, and I also knew because like cartoons, movies, it touched me different than I think it touched most. So I knew that I wanted to be into art, whatever specific type of art it would be. I knew that it was gonna be.
Yeah. And did you find, like, I think we all at times end up having hurdles that we have to go through, whether it's family or school or community or whatever, where you almost have to double down on your belief in yourself to get to that next level, because you have so many people who, again, are challenging what you should be. You know, I mean, I know that, and at some point people stopped saying it because people just gave up, but like, you know, why not go to college?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Why not do this? Why not do that? Like, what was that experience for you?
That was tough. Yeah, I dealt with that from multiple of people, and it did affect me, and it made me steer away from art for a little bit, and made me question my my passion, and made me be like, okay, let me get a conventional job and let me go the straight and narrow path rather than do what my heart wanted. And that's tough. But I think that at the end of the day, you have to say, you know, F it, and stick to what makes you happy, and just stick to what you want to do in your life. And when that for me, that's art. And I had to push all that out the way and just remind myself that this is my life.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Well, I noticed, like, in your artwork, some of the people, again, first of all, like, a lot of them are Black in identity, but also a lot of them are, like, Tupac, for example. You have Tupac on there, Method Man, and there's some other, but they're, I guess if you look at them from the outset, like, you would say, like those are typical Black identity people, but, like, with somebody like Tupac, like, there's a lot more to that. There's some contention in his own, and I noticed that a lot of your subjects are people that would be considered to have some contention in their identity. I know you also have Johnny Depp on there, and, like, he's always been kind of a contentious character just in himself, but especially lately with everything. But do you gravitate towards contentious characters?
I do, and specifically for those photos of Tupac, Method Man, I did Kehlani, I did Chloe Bailey, that specific series, and I did her as well. That specific series,
that was the other one
I did. That was inspired by the passing of DMX, because I felt like he was appreciated and people love his music, but he wasn't given his flowers, I feel like, enough while he was here. So I created a series. I wanted to give people their flowers while they're currently still here. And those specific artists have been through, you know, hell and back. So, and some of my favorite artists. So
I'm gonna go wildly off, not really wildly off topic, but you just brought up something that I've always been, again, and I tread lightly with both my perceptions and my questions. I often find that, you know, because again, I give props to the fact that most modern culture in the United States, whether it's rock and roll or what has become of modern day hip hop or R&B, it's all Black originated. You know, like, other than, and to get slightly off topic, but I think that most hip hop or rap and it's folk music. To me, it's the same as somebody like, you know, a folk artist like Woody Guthrie or something like that, or Willie Nelson. You know, like, whichever way he knows, I love Willie Nelson. But it's storytelling, and it's storytelling of your own identity and the issues that you're dealing with and stuff like that.
It's poetry.
Yeah, 100%. And what I find linguistically is that Black culture is often pushing language and what's acceptable, but also I find sometimes is more accurate in its representation. Until maybe it's been 10 years, but the last 5 years, you really started to hear the phrase, I appreciate you versus I appreciate it.
Yes.
You know, if you go out to a restaurant in you know, I'll say it like it is. You go out to a restaurant and you see a bunch of old fuddy-duddy white people, they're going to say, I appreciate it.
Yes.
They're saying that they appreciate the action or the object that is being given to them versus the person. And I remember the first time that it kind of hit me that like a lot of my black friends were using "I appreciate you," and that it seems more meaningful.
Yes.
And what's some of the other ones? I think the first time I ever heard they transitioned in a reference to death was actually, it might have been Black Twitter, like you were talking about.
Yes.
But you just said, it brought it up because you said give them their flowers.
Yes.
And I understand the reference of like you give someone who's passed away flowers, but I'd never heard it to represent the concept of like giving someone love and respect while they're still alive.
Yeah, I think that's very important because majority of people give it afterwards.
Right.
It's like a little too late. Yeah, they need to know while they're here how much we appreciate and value them and what they've done.
Yeah, 100% agree. And do you, would I guess back in linguistics, like where did you hear that first, or how did it come across to being used in your lexicon? Like,
I think it's a thing I've always kind of heard, but specifically because of 2020 and multiple killings and of African American men and African American women, and I think I just caught on to the phrase a little bit more, people wanting to appreciate their loved ones while they're here because we don't know when something happens or they're gone. And yeah, so I think that really brought it on. And then more so, a lot of our famous people, Kobe Bryant, DMX, and multiple of other people who passed away recently, and you appreciate them, but everyone needs to love them while they're here. So,
well, I know for me, it was an interesting, sad and interesting day. Like, if anybody didn't know, like, I'm a huge Prince fan, and I very clearly remember the day he died. I remember where I was. I remember what I was doing. I remember the phone calls that came quickly after, and then I remember going through my day and only certain people, most of which were considered minorities of one way or another in the United States, they were the only ones that recognized, and not to say that, like, obviously Prince affected a lot of people. It's not exclusive to one culture or another, and maybe it's just the way that we deal with things. But I remember specifically, I was at work, and this guy that, you know, I actually ended up having a ton in common with, an older black guy came up, and he just looked at me, and he was like, "Are you okay?" And all of a sudden I was like, "I'm not," like, I'm not okay. Like, and he pulled me over to the side, and like, we had this big old conversation, and it was like, you know, I'd had 100 other customers.
yeah.
And, you know, they didn't see in me what he saw, you know, and it's just, it was kind of a transcendent experience of, like, again, I guess how music can break barriers, and music can, you know, show people different things. I mean, I think it's, one of my favorite artists right now is Yola, and I learned of her through the Highwomen, which is a Nashville supergroup of very eclectic women, and she's actually, I think, British, strong, thick black woman, who does kind of R&B soul, but then she also just does straight up country.
Yes.
You know, and it's pretty amazing to tread those territories, and you know, it's hard, I think, nowadays in the United States to bridge gaps. It's really hard.
Yes, it is.
And I think, because I understand that, like, some people that may listen to my music would be alienated by other people that might listen to my music, and I don't know how to bridge that gap in a healthy way. I'm sure it's not even my responsibility. Like, I'm just a musician. I'm supposed to show up and entertain people, but I guess there is a deeper seated concept in there of wanting to, and I think maybe I'm wrong, but I think part of it is it is holding people accountable. I think accountability is important, but I think you can only go down the accountability road for so long before it just feels like you're beating a horse, you know. But like,
Yes.
I know that perception. I was listening to NPR the other day, and they were talking about the difference between historical identity. So, because the modern America is mostly controlled by, and I'm sure some people don't want to hear this, but it's controlled by white identity in the sense that, you know, 9/11 should never be forgotten. But, you know, slavery or Jim Crow or the civil rights movement was so long ago, and just get over it already.
Yeah. I think that the main issue with that is most history that's like taught in school or that people think of is like they think our history started with slavery. What about before slavery? What were we doing then? Whether it's movie representation or the school books, it only stops there when they try to capture us. What about before, how we were living? And, you know, we were just talking about this earlier, being like kings and queens. So I think that's the majority of the problem. So it's not necessarily that it should be forgotten. It is a part of our history, but it's not the only part. And that needs to be recognized.
Right. Well, and I feel too, I try to be conscious about these things, but as someone who's interviewing you, I can see where either side of this line of highlighting your Black identity is great, but if the whole interview is about your Black identity, then I'm not taking into consideration the whole person
Yes.
and the concepts, because like nobody comes up to me and exclusively expects me to talk about my white identity and
Yes.
what it's like to be a redneck and, you know, drive trucks and derp, like, you know, and I fumble sometimes. I don't know how to approach that. Like I want to highlight who you are, but I don't ever want to minimize who you are by overly focusing on one
Yes.
aspect, you know.
But I think it's I don't think it's a bad balance, because that's who I am. I'm an African American woman, and I love that. So I think you're doing a pretty good job.
I was not fishing for a compliment.
Oh,
but, I guess it is, you know, it is nice to know in the attempts of being an ally and attempts to trying to highlight you, you know, that we're going about it the right way. I don't even know where to go from here. Is there anything else you specifically want to talk about in terms of your art, your identity, your views for the world, your feelings, your deeper meaning, and or do you want to turn it on us and ask us, you know, or me, any questions, or all of the above?
I do kind of want to ask you a question.
Okay, shoot.
Okay, so you sent me a demo of one of the songs that you plan on, you know, releasing, and that goes back to you saying that you wanted to basically push that limit and you want your music to be all inclusive. And I think that song, I don't know if you know what I'm talking about.
I think I
yeah,
do.
is all inclusive. So that's already, and it's not really a question, I guess maybe a question,
Right.
maybe a statement. That's already allowing you guys to make that next step. So as far as bridging together gaps, you're kind of already doing that, and you're doing what you said that you needed help on.
I'm trying. I guess if you guys come to the show, you'll hear about this song as well.
Yeah.
And I guess it's a good enough time to tell the story of the song. It was pretty funny because I was at my day job and I was walking with one of the other guys, and there was a guy who was asking us for money, and my coworker first was like, "Oh, I don't have anything," and then the guy turned to ask me, and before I could even be like, "Oh, I don't have anything," he's like, "I know you don't have anything, guitar man," and I was like, "What? Like, how do you know I play guitar?" Like, I mean, I guess, like, maybe this is the TED giveaway, but like, I was confused. And he was like, "You're all tall and you're all skinny." And I was like, I'm not that tall. And he looks at me and goes, "And you ain't that skinny." And I could have taken that as like, yeah, I'm not that tall, I'm not that skinny. Like, it's true. But the thing that I took away from that was that the essence of, I know this is silly, but like the essence of rock and roll, the essence of wanting to be, up on stage, swinging your hips and all of the rock and roll things. He saw that somehow.
Yeah.
He saw through the work clothes, and he saw through the fact that I'm not that tall, I'm not that skinny. So I went home and I started writing a song that was not just about me and my experience of having to embrace who I am regardless of the fact that I'm not tall and skinny, but all of the different types of characters I could paint. And I settled on generally to, when you're writing a song, you want it to be vague enough that people get it, but you want it to be specific enough that people can identify with it, but you certainly don't want to over dilute it with too much information, like I just did with that sentence. So I went with a very me-ish character, and I went with, relatively a you-ish character, I guess. Like you're a good representation of this. Like, I've stood next to you. You're not very tall.
No, I'm not very tall, and I'm not very skinny.
and it doesn't matter to you. And that's the point. That's the hook of the song. Like, I'm not that tall, I'm not that skinny, and it don't matter much to me. And so I created these two characters. A lot of my songs take place in a bar. I just think it's a good setting. Yeah. And so there's the lead singer character, and then there's this girl at the bar character, and they end up talking, and she is prideful of the fact that she's not tall and skinny, and she's got all her swagger. And I was trying to describe it to the band in terms of like what the goal was beyond the sense of self-empowerment for anybody, because I want people to sing along and say, I ain't that tall, I ain't that skinny, and it don't matter. And I want that to be anybody fitting in with that identity. But I also just said, you know what? I want everybody dancing, and I want big girls dancing, and I want people who wouldn't normally necessarily, hypothetically feel comfortable on the dance floor just shaking everything they got, because you ain't tall and you ain't skinny, and it don't matter to me.
I think that's great. I think that song might be like my career song. Yeah. I think that's exactly how my art is. Yeah. I'm always finding the different, the not normal, the mixed, crazy hair, anything that pushes against the standard. So I like that. Yeah.
Well, I think we just found a place where your art and our music meets. Yeah.
We go. We bridged the gap.
We brought you on, I guess for that specific purpose. All right, I think we're gonna say goodbye here. I'm sure we could talk for a lot more hours, and maybe if you're willing, we'd be happy to have you on again.
A part two
at some point.
That'd be amazing.
Dig deeper, and again, as I usually say, here's the outro music.